Welcome to another episode of It's Just Conjecture. Usually I don't do little intros in advance, but in this case I felt it was essential. We've been interviewing somebody from Australia and therefore we had to do it by Zoom. I mean, really, we'll be talking about this in a TikTok at a later date, Mr. Zoom. In reality, it's a fantastic podcast. If you're just listening, it's not a problem. The video's fine. It's just not as perfect as we like it. Make sure you listen to the whole podcast because there's some really cool information about Stone Axe Wagyu from Australia and with my new best mate, Steve Shields. It's really good fun. Have a listen, see what you think. And please don't forget, like and subscribe. It's Just Conjecture. Next. There we go. So can you see a little recording at the top there?
I can, yeah.
Top left? Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
So it says got a little picture of a cloud and it's recording, so that should be cool.
Yeah, little red cloud by the looks of it.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So welcome to the next episode. We've got with us today Steve from Australia, and you're probably thinking, Steve from Australia, who's that? Well, Steve, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and why you come to speak to us today.
Thanks, Damian. So I'm Steve Shields. I work for a business called Stone Axe Pastoral. So we are a specialized Wagyu producing business that's vertically integrated. We run two brands. Our biggest and strongest brand is Stone Axe Full Blood Wagyu, which is spread around the world and very strong in Europe. And then we have another brand on the west side of Australia called Margaret River, which is synonymous for wineries and that sort of lush green areas. But so my background, I've been with the business 4.5 years. Prior to that, I was with another beef and cattle business for 5. And prior to that, 8 years in a multi-species business selling and marketing protein around the world. So chef by trade, living on the sunny Gold Coast here in Queensland. And happy days. Here I am.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate you coming to speak to us because obviously we spoke a little bit before and I sort of explained a bit about what we do. A lot of people first hear about super yachts and they're like, well, I don't even know what that is. Other people just presume that it's just complete madness. And when they do, that's pretty much right. It can be complete madness. The reason I wanted to speak to you is because I found Stone Axe. Basically, I'm trawling the internet all the time. I'm not a troll, by the way, but I'm trawling the internet.
And this isn't vodka either, okay? So it's good.
Yeah, I put my vodka in an Evian bottle, so... but generally, always looking for amazing product. I think that's what my company, Riviera Gourmet, is famous for, is finding amazing product. I spend a lot of time traveling looking for product as well. I found Stone Axe one day on the internet when I was looking for Wagyu information, and I was like, what, this award-winning, how have I not heard about this? Where do I get this? I found a distributor in Europe. I spoke to him about it. I got some pricing through. And then in 2023, I bought it for the first time.
Great.
I think after the whole COVID thing, we had to be very careful with what we actually had in stock. But I felt in 2023, it was time to bring in a new product. And I've got a lot of questions for you, not just about Stone Axe, but generally about Wagyu. And we'll get into Stone Axe, I think, obviously a little bit later. But right now, my most important thing that happens to me every day in my industry is a chef puts on an order list or on our website when they're ordering, and they'll say, for example, 2 fillets of Wagyu. And I immediately go, some questions. For me, that's not enough information. It's like if somebody says on their list, I'll have a kilo of apples. Well, okay, what are you doing with the apple? What's it for? Is it for a fruit bowl? Are you cooking with it? What's happening? I need more. Same with Wagyu. And I think Wagyu is completely misconstrued. People do not understand it. They just go, oh, really expensive beef. So tell me a little bit about Wagyu. What's different about it? But its origins and what Stone Axe is in comparison to the origins of the beef.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good point, actually, even just talking about apples, because, an apple can be used in so many different techniques, whether it's stewing, cooking, eating, sweetness, sourness, a little bit like beef. Like you just said, then a chef rings up and orders a fillet. And the thing is, around the globe, everyone's got a different terminology. Even here in Australia, a fillet could be a number of things, like a Scotch fillet or an eye fillet. Like what are you guys talking about? So education is really big that we do for our our customers around the globe. So look, we're a full-blood Wagyu program. Like we've got direct lineage back to Japan. We've got full traceability of all of our genetics. The founders of the business actually bought live cattle trade through the US back into Australia. And we've got that sort of direct business or that direct lineage back into Japan for that full blood Wagyu program. So we vertically integrated, we AI, we background, we grow, we feedlot, and then we take it to a processing plant from there on. So we're the closest thing to.
So you're saying, but my interpretation there is there's a lot of Wagyu that isn't full blood Wagyu.
Correct.
We've got crossbreeds, I would have presumed, with Angus, with all sorts.
With anything, yeah. So you could basically put a full-blood Wagyu over a Drought Master or a Angus or a Hereford, whatever it might be. And then, you get that first cross, then it goes up to 4 crosses, and then you get back to a full-blood. So basically, full-blood bull, full-blood cow, progeny is a full-blood calf. It's at the top of the top. It's the pinnacle. Okay. You're not going to get any better.
And that's what Stoneaxe is. So I mean, I hate to talk about other companies. The problem I have is when somebody says to me, "I'll have a fillet of Wagyu," my first question is, "Okay, how much do you want to spend?" Because if you want, and I mean this with no disrespect, if you want Spanish or Welsh, okay, it's usually not full blood. I mean, I'm saying usually, but we know it never is. The type of Wagyu it is not. It's not the same as a full blood, and it's not the same as Japanese. And so when somebody says, "I want a fillet," and I'm talking tenderloin or different names in different places, but what's the difference in the flavor profile of a full blood Wagyu fillet as compared to something that's been bred with a Black Angus, for example?
Yeah.
And how far down that, how many breeding can you do with a Black Angus cow with an original full blood to create? I mean, how many different flavor profiles have we got? You never know what you're getting when you order it unless you do research.
Correct. Yeah, and that's the beauty of going straight to the top. It's a bit like a branded car. You get the base model, but it runs the original brand name, and then they spec it up, and you end up with a fully pimped up sports car, or you can buy the base model where midlife crisis, or the ones that you're still winding the windows up. So the good thing with our product is you've got this rich, creamy, intramuscular fat. You just by a visual look at it, if you look at our social media, we've got a lot of chefs around the globe who post every day our product, and you actually see the marbling through the product. So it's got a distinct taste. It's rich, it's buttery, it's full of flavor, super tender, and it's got so many variants across the total carcass, because our business model is a little bit different to a lot of other guys out there, where all of our customers, what we sell to them is a full set. So they get around that 32 different cuts per animal, per carcass, I should say. So Europe's taking 24 carcasses, and we break them down into each of the primals, and then they take them up into Europe. USA's taken 60, all around. This week we did 278. We're boning 278 bodies this week alone here in Queensland. So it's amazing. It's an absolutely amazing effort where we've got to now.
And so do you, you obviously export to the US. Now, how do you find sales in the US compared to companies like Snake River Farm, for example?
Yeah, look, we're very fortunate with our product because we've got a lot of these group chefs and owners of strong brands that have restaurants in, Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, and, they've got some really classy restaurants, and they've also got these restaurants back in the US and Europe, and they go to Singapore, they try it, they taste it, then all of a sudden, now we're up in, cut by Wolfgang Park up at Beverly Hills Wilshire Hotel, or in Vegas. So we're in all these high-end restaurants that the chef demands to have that product on the menu. I think because we're an Australian Wagyu producer, we've got that sort of connotation of safe. There's no mucking around with this product. It's full traceability. Food safety is prominent, or is key of mind for everybody. So I think they've got a lot of trust in that sort of Australian brand and product. Plus, it's a really cool name, right? Stoneaxe. Chefs love it.
Yeah.
Like, I know
Yeah.
we get chefs ringing us up saying, we love the brand. Like, how do we get this on a menu? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I know
that's how
it's
we start the conversation.
when I first saw the name, I loved it because it just
Yeah.
sounds cool. I completely agree with you.
Yeah,
Branding is so important, and the name's so important for
absolutely.
anything because it gets people's attention and it's
Yeah,
memorable, and that's what I love about it. And Snake River Farm is also another cool one. It's
correct.
like this Snake
Absolutely.
River. It's a bit weird.
Yeah.
I love names like that, and that's how I originally, when I first started selling to boats, I really wanted Snake River Farm, and at the time they didn't import into Europe. Now they
Yeah.
do. We sell a lot of Snake River Farm. We have a lot of
Yeah.
people request it by name. Um,
Yeah.
for me, I think the big difference is, if I'm not mistaken, Snake River Farm is a crossbreed. Is that right?
I'm not 100% sure if it's cross or full, but
Putting you on the spot now, aren't you?
yeah, no,
They'll
it's
be on the
fine
phone
because
later.
there's so
They'll
many
be like,
brands out
"No,
there.
we're not."
Yeah, there's so many brands out there that have different, bolt-ons to their business, and and I'm not 100% sure if it's a full blood or not, but it's also breeding and eating. So, in Australia, in the US, I should say, it's predominantly a corn-fed product in the US.
Okay.
In Australia, it's more grain, it's more wheat, barley, canola, cottonseed. And that's predominantly what most cattle in Australia actually have in the
So that's a
feedlot.
different flavor and completely different flavor you're going to get from the
Absolutely.
beef then, and
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
different fat content. I mean, the big
And
thing about
yeah,
Wagyu is the fat content, of course, and that's why.
yeah,
And somebody said to me, "Why would I want fat in my beef?" I mean, they're not a food person, so they're going to say things like
yeah,
that because generally, if you start cooking the meat, then you're going to have the fat content's going to melt as it cooks, and that's going to create a
yeah,
lot of flavor in the beef, isn't it? And
yeah,
that's how
absolutely.
you have a lot of flavor, and that could be even if you buy, a really cheap cut of locally made or grown beef in France, for example. We've got some
Yeah,
famous brands here, but there is not that much flavor.
yeah,
I get up. I find it all strange when people say things to me like, "Oh, French beef is the best." I live in France. In the
yeah,
UK, I'm from the UK originally. The
yeah,
adverts on the TV is British is best.
yeah,
It's not true. It's
yeah,
it's a complete fantasy. It's not true at all. If you want to braise the hell out of something, then it doesn't matter what you're going to use.
yeah,
But if you want to
absolutely.
cook it and you don't want to be all saucy, everything's sauce these days. Every
Yeah,
chef wants to
yeah,
create a sauce. I
yes,
think a true chef uses a good quality produce, lets the
yeah,
produce speak for itself, doesn't fill the plate with different flavors and sauces to cover up
yeah,
what they can't achieve by cooking. Oh, it's going to get some grief for that. But it's so true. I
yeah,
personally cook a steak. I have no sauce on it whatsoever because I
yeah,
want to taste the beef. That's how I
correct.
taste beef. That's how I
Yeah,
test it. And I think if you
yes,
have it on a barbecue, or I mean, I love to have like a brisket cooked on a barbecue. For me, that's
yeah,
like the thing. Um,
yeah,
but it's all about that fat content melting away
yeah,
and creating the flavor. Now that comes to a point. Beer, massage. These are two
yeah,
words that people associate with Wagyu cattle in Japan. Is that
yeah.
something that you do in Australia too with your full
Oh,
blood?
look, I love beer and I love a massage, but unfortunately, we don't give our cattle beer and we don't massage them. I know, look, there is some provinces in Japan where they do that, and we've got people in Australia that feed grapes, chocolate. There's a whole lot of different olive pips and everything else, but we don't. No, ours aren't that lucky enough to get a massage every day. But they the difference also with ours, Damien, is that our full blood Wagyu are all grown in high altitude. So all of our animals are grown 1,000 meters above sea level. So we're in this clean, green, fresh air. I live on the Gold Coast, and about 3 weeks ago, I drove 4 hours south to one of our properties. It was about 35 degrees here. Drove up the range and it slipped down to 14 degrees.
Yeah,
Cold, lit the fire, amazing. And this
yeah.
cattle live and breathe this most amazing in these most pristine regions of Australia.
But they're also, if I so I read this on the site that they're an Alpine a breed, therefore, and so
Yeah,
in my opinion, that's going to create a different kind of fat content because they're actually going to be active. They're going to have muscle. They're going to have,
yeah,
probably stronger hearts. In no disrespect to the other
yeah,
cows, they'll be on the
yeah.
phone later as well. What are you talking about, mate? I'm perfectly
Yeah,
fine. I'm in the gym. But I wander around and see cattle in France on the plains, and they're not
yeah,
doing uphill, downhill, so they're going to be less
correct.
fit. They're just going to be getting fat. Whereas
Yeah.
I think if you've got them in an Alpine region, they're probably going to be
Yeah.
fitter cattle. So you're going to get a different flavor from the cook anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, their whole cardiovascular, they're moving around and in that lush environment, which we
Yeah.
all love to go and visit.
We had when I first got Stone Axe last year, I think it was one of the first clients that bought it. He's actually Australian, and he said to me, "Oh, it's Australian, fantastic." Awful accent of mine. And he said he wanted it. He actually bought tomahawks from us,
Yeah,
and
perfect.
he had a charter client on, very, very large yacht,
Yeah,
huge yacht, and they were on for 2 weeks. And he took quite a lot of the tomahawks. He said, "I've got, they've requested Wagyu. They want some really good cuts. So I'm going to do tomahawks because they look great." I said,
yeah,
"Please
yeah,
don't do the Salt Bay covering it in gold." He went, "Damian,
yeah, yeah,
I'm a real chef.
yeah,
I'm never going to do that."
yeah,
And he, at the end of the charter, he rang me up and he said, "We've got another trip next week." He goes, "But I've got a story for you." And I said,
yeah,
"Okay, what happened?" He goes, I want to talk to you about your stone axe." I was like, "Oh Christ," because he was the first person that took it, and I
yeah,
tasted it, and I knew it was kick ass. But
yeah,
my opinion at the end of the day isn't relevant. The only opinion that counts, and you could say my chef's opinion's relevant, and that's not even true. It's the client.
yeah,
The client's
absolutely.
opinion is the only one that counts in this
Yeah,
industry. And he
yeah,
said to me, yeah, I won't mention his name because he won't want people to know who he is. But
yeah,
generally, on the last night of the trip, the charter principal asked the chef to come up to the aft deck on the boat, and there was no one else
yeah,
there, no crew. He'd asked for all crew to disappear, and the chef thought,
yeah,
"Holy shit, I'm getting a bollocking. I've been
yeah,
cooking for these guys, killing myself for 2 weeks, and this guy's going to lose his shit with me for some
yeah,
reason
yeah,
because he'd never been asked to see the principal on the last night before,
yeah,
after dinner." And the guy's sitting there with a glass of wine and a cigar. And he says, "Come and sit down next to me. Can I get you a drink?" He's like, "No, no, it's fine." He's like really embarrassed about the whole thing. I think, what is going to happen?
yeah,
And the guy said to him, "So just I've tipped the crew. I've left a tip with the captain for everybody. It's a big thing, tips on super yachts, of course." He
yeah,
goes, "But I've got this for you," and he gives him an envelope. He says, "Don't open it in front of me. Take that with you." He goes, "And I
yeah,
just wanted to say that obviously your tip is included with everyone else's. I know it's split on the yacht." He said, "But this tip is specifically for you, that envelope." He goes, "Because I literally have never ever had a piece of beef like you
wow,
served this week." He said, I'm a massive fan of beef. I've eaten it all over the world, ate in the best
yeah,
restaurants." He goes,
yeah,
"And the tomahawk you cooked me this week was simply the best piece of beef I've ever had in my life."
wow,
He
amazing.
goes, "And that envelope's for you, just to say to you
Yeah,
that you choose a good product." He goes, "That was
yeah,
amazing." He
great.
goes, "The food's been absolutely fantastic." He goes, "But that beef," he goes, "literally, my knife fell through. It's cooked to perfection." He said, "I've
Yeah,
never tasted anything like it." He said, "And I just want
yeah,
you to know that I really appreciate that." And the
yeah.
chef went off. I won't tell you how much was in the envelope because I don't think it's right.
That's all good.
But the chef he just said to me, "Damien, that beef was outrageous." And that was the
Yeah,
first client that bought Stone Axe from us last year.
yeah, great,
And
great.
that's why, after that, I was like, "I've got to speak to these people. I've got to find out what they do." So
Yeah,
I take it the Wagyu cat was imported from Japan originally, and
correct. Yeah,
from that you breed and breed and breed to
yeah,
keep the herd going. So
yeah,
tell me a
yeah.
little bit
So
about that process.
yeah, so that basically started in 2014. So we're only a very young company. And the founders of the business actually had another very strong brand in Australia and then sold that on to another big cattle farm. And, they were then sent out on gardening leave. And then when the gardening leave finished, they had a seed stock. So they had basically straws of frozen semen and embryos ready to go. And then they started the business from there. So that was 2014. We did our first production in December 19, just 6 head just to get it going.
Oh wow.
And it was like, yeah, it was amazing. It was like that sort of showcase. Everyone was there, and it was just like, watching that first bodies come through, or the carcasses come through, and exciting stuff. And to the point where we've got it now, we're just doubling our numbers now. Each year now, projection is double the numbers. In total, we've got, with our Margaret River herd and our Stone Axe herd, we've got just over 60,000 animals on ground. So we're not
Wow.
small. We're a very young, dynamic business. We're lean. We don't have a lot of staff. Animals are obviously the key to the business that we've got, the cattle are. So basically it's about animal welfare, looking after them from birth all the way up through to the feedlot, and then, right through to the end process of, creating great beef. And, I think that's the exciting part of the business, is that we've got that traceability. We know exactly from that ear tag they've got, we know their parentage, their sire, the dame, we know exactly. So if one of them didn't marble right, then we've got the genetics to actually go back through the database to find out, how come that only got a marble score 8 and not a marble score 9+? So we can start working back out how we mate from there.
So tell me a little bit about the marbling score process, because a lot of my chefs, they know a bit about it. I get a lot of people say to me they want, 8, 9, or they want a 5. But let's just, if you can, I'm sure you've got all the information. So the grading score is different from it would be in Japan. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So
explain the two different ones.
Okay. So in Australia, we're pretty much governed under an OzMeat accreditation. So not that ours ever achieve a marble score 2, 3, or 4, 5, but you can go up to a 9 or a 9+. So you can only ever put a 9 on the grading sheet, but if it's over a 9, you can get that 9+ label. However, what we do then, we go over and above that, and we run an MIJ camera. So we basically, the grading area is between the 12th and the 13th rib, and an independent OzMeat grader or qualified grader goes into the cold room about 4 o'clock in the morning, and he's got chips, and he puts those chips against the marble score and the fat color, and he irons them up and says, right, that there is a 9, that's a 9+, a 7 or a 6 or whatever it might be. And that's what gets registered. But then what we do is we put an MIJ camera over it, and it's a digital camera that picks up all the fineness and the actual intramuscular fat going through. And, up to last year, we're getting like 18s, 19s, just the most amazing marble scores, unbelievable. The Japanese go up to they go A5, A10, and they use a different technique to us. But we in Australia can only ever go to a 9+. And if we've got a marble score 18, 19, we actually can't brand that as an 18 or 19. It's always just got to be a marble score 9+. Obviously, the higher the marble, the richer the meat. If you want to sit down and eat a 300-400 gram Scotch fillet of a 9+, it's hard eating for one person. It's
it's rich. Like you need to go to the doctor and have a checkup afterwards, don't you?
Correct.
I've always said this. This is why I like to have Wagyu from outside of Japan. It's just my personal preference. I'm not having to go at the Japanese beef. It's obviously amazing and beautiful, but you have to have it very limited because the fat content is so high. I've sold some of it and looked at it and gone, that's just fat. There isn't any meat here. I mean, the sinews of meat are the same level as the sinews of fat. And the problem with that is that, one, when you're cooking it creates a huge amount of fat in the pan. Huge. I think you have to cook Japanese Wagyu a completely different way than you would cook. When I cooked one of your tomahawks, I couldn't cook that the same way if it was a Japanese A5. I couldn't do it. It would just be completely weird. And I think there's a difference, but why is there that difference in fat content? Because you clearly see it when you look at a Japanese. If you just go on the internet now and anybody looks and goes Japanese fillet, stone axe fillet, you're going to see two different colors, two different types. It's a lot darker red on stone axe than it would be to Japanese, for example. It's got more of a pink tinge to it. So what is it that creates that?
Look, I think this is from an uneducated sort of guess with the Japanese, that Wagyu, they don't get around and walk. You see them on documentaries that they're in barns, they're standing there, they've got to lead.
Bars. I was like, bars.
That's with the beer and the massage. But they're not, they're not out free range. They're not walking around. They're basically, it's like foie gras potentially. You know what I mean? They're getting fed constantly. They're not exercising and moving. Where our guys are actually walking around, moving. But we do get some of our Wagyu that comes through that you put it next to a Japanese A5 and you go, oh, that looks very close. But I think it's got a lot to do with diet as well. Humans, we all eat the same. We'd probably taste the same. But, if we eat different sort of food, we might taste different as well. So it's about diet
Yeah.
and I'll taste terrible, right?
Just thinking how many comments we're going to get about that. Yeah.
So I
I
think
had a
that's
human in Brazil who was completely different from the Isle of Man. Yeah.
So I think that could have a lot to do with it as well, because we have got that sort of full blood genetics back from Japan, so there shouldn't really be much difference. But it comes down to cooking as well, because we know the Japanese don't sit down and eat steak, right? They eat a lot of thin sliced beef, whether it's over charcoal or over a hibachi or hot pot yakiniku, or however they might like to do it. Where in Australia or the US, these guys like big steaks. And so what we try and do is encourage, hey, you want your big steak? That's great. Let's share the product on the table. So 3 or 4 people can actually sit down and eat that tomahawk, or, share it with everyone, so everyone can try some different parts of that product, which is great.
Yeah, no, totally. So, is there a limit to how much you can produce and actually sell? I mean, I know there are limits of what you can bring into Europe. There is, and we had this problem. This was a huge issue actually, a few years ago, because every year more and more people want Wagyu, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I first started selling to yachts, I was like a little bit of Wagyu here and there. I thought, oh, that's quite cool. Every year it grew, and I thought to myself, at some point it's going to stop. And it's going to go back the other way, and there's going to be some health issue with, you know what it's like. Different diets come in. We've got yacht owners now who are non meat eaters. I mean, the list goes on. But it doesn't matter what comes out in the press about diets that people should be having and all these things. We've got more and more Wagyu being sold every year. So there is a limit, isn't there? There's a cap on how much can be brought in from Australia into Europe, for example.
Yeah, there's a quota. So it's like into China as well, and to other countries as well. So what happens if you hit the quota, you potentially can still sell it, but then you get hit with a tariff. And then once that tariff kicks in, the product just becomes more expensive. So a lot of importers go, look, we've hit the tariff. We're not going to buy anymore now. We're going to wait until the tariff resets. So example, China reset January 1. Last couple of weeks of December, everyone's going slow down. And then as soon as January 1 comes, we start supplying again. But yeah, there's definitely, it's interesting, like, because we follow trends around what people are doing. And, this carnivore diet seems to be coming back out again, and keto, everyone's
old Joe Rogan, eh?
Yeah, exactly. So
gotta love him for beef sales.
He's great.
Should send him a commission. I mean, he's always telling people to make sure that they're eating just meat. You should be saying, here's your commission check, big boy.
Yeah, meat and butter, I think he eats, and salt. So it's basically just trying to keep up with what people are doing and helping chefs along the journey as well. Because, if you look at the secondary cuts off a carcass, it's about 28 cuts. Every part of that carcass needs to make up a value to make that proposition work. And there's a lot of product on, a lot of cuts that chefs just don't know what to do with, because they've never had that training. So we try and help them through the process of, what am I going to do with a knuckle? What am I going to the top side? What am I going to do with an outside flat? Hey, how about doing like some sort of kick-ass sort of Reuben sandwich, just pickle it and just put it through the, in the combi, and do these amazing Reuben sandwiches on some sort of brioche, or just trying to give them ideas, because if they're lesser price cuts versus a filet or a cube roll or a strip loin. So all of a sudden they've got 9+ Stoneaxe Wagyu at quarter of the price of a primal. And it's still, they can still use that sort of connotation of on the menu, the brand call out, all the attributes that go with it, and get a better food cost as well. And that's what they're there for. To create
what, this
profit.
is such an important point, and it's something I've been banging on about for years. Every chef I speak to, I say the same thing. I mean, we've just built a test kitchen here, and I'm going to be cooking the lesser known cuts, because for me, I was talking to a restaurant chef. He's a Japanese restaurant in Cannes. Really, really amazing chef, actually. I mean, I think he'll go Michelin star at some point. The guy's unreal.
Amazing.
And we were talking, and I said, if you look at the group that he's part of, the restaurant group, they do a lot of tomahawks and fillets and things like that. And it really upsets me, because they want profit, but they're not prepared to use lesser priced cuts.
Yeah.
For me, a brisket, for example, is there's many things you can do with it. There's many cuts. I went through the list actually. You'll all the cuts that come into Europe the other day, and I was just going, wow. Hanger steak. I mean, nobody uses a hanger. When's the last time you go to a restaurant and see hanger steak? No one ever uses it. And it sort of winds me up a bit, because if you've got a restaurant, you're working on a budget, a price. You need to plate up that meal, and you need to know what it cost you, and then you need to put your margin on. Why would you do it with a fillet when you don't need to? But there's some education. It's customer education. I don't even think it's just chef. It's like customers walk in, they've got a few quid in their pocket. They're with their lady, and they think to themselves, if I don't order a fillet, she'll think I'm cheap. It's just, it's got, forget that. Forget the cost of the actual product and start looking at the other cuts and what you can do. It's impossible for you to just sell fillet, ribeye, and sirloin. It's impossible, because that's not a cow. And there's so many cuts that people can use. And I always try to push other cuts on my clients. Unfortunately, I'm in the trade where, you know, if you put hanger steak on a menu on a yacht, I think you'd lose your job. They want fillet, ribeye, sirloin. That's what they're looking for. These, you know, these clientele. But I think in the restaurant trade, absolutely super important to change your budgets. Make sure you can offer an amazing quality beef, but just a different cut. And you can do cool things with it. Things you wouldn't do with a fillet, because it would be pointless. And that's what I think we need to get across. And I'm definitely going to do some videos on that in the new kitchen. Not that I'm you know, the best chef in the world. I'm not even going to pretend that's true. It's just, I'm going to play around with other cuts and see what I can invent, see what I can come up with, because I believe restaurant trade should be using those other cuts, and it's better for you, it's better for the distributors, and it's better for the restaurant owners. So, you know, the price is better. So I think it's something that should be pushed a lot. Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the classic is carpaccio, beef carpaccio. Majority of people use an eye fillet, a tenderloin. You know, the eye round on a Wagyu is better. The flavor, the taste, the texture, and it's amazing how many chefs that we've got now using an eye round for a carpaccio.
Oh wow, cool.
Things like an eye fillet. You know, as we all know, the tenderloin comes down to one end, and it's sort of like some chefs yield terrible with it and do whatever. They might throw it into a burger mix. But, you know, put it onto a nice little bamboo skewer and then just send it out to the table like on a mini hibachi with charcoal, and let the let the customer just turn it while they're having a beer and some peanuts at the bar, and just little smart things that they've got so many great ideas that we can help educate and share with chefs and restaurateurs around the world, which we do.
I even bought recently for somebody Wagyu Brizola.
Right. Yes. Amazing.
Yeah. Quite cool. I'm not a big cured meat fan, but I know there's a lot of people are, and they sell really, really well. And the guy that bought that, he said it was absolutely fantastic. He thought it was fantastic. Some other things I wanted to discuss with you. Now, I mentioned it before, COVID. How did that affect things? Because I think it's quite cool for people listening to understand what happened during COVID, because only now we're really recovering from that. You know, from my understanding, and you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, insemination stopped because restaurants were closed. But there is a knock-on process, because it takes, how long does it take from insemination to getting a fillet?
About 38 months, roughly.
Okay. So if you think about it, you stop insemination and you don't, you know, you take a year. How long did your guys take off from that? A year?
Well, the thing is, we're a little bit different in Australia, because we were still classed as essential services. So a majority of the abattoirs did not close down fully. So they were still operating on skeleton staff. And it's really interesting. And I was only talking to a guy a couple of weeks ago about is that our business model changed, our customers changed. So all of a sudden, all the restaurants have closed in Australia, like they're shut. Every door is closed. And you've got all these people at home, just using Australia as an example, that are getting funds from the government. So they're still getting paid. Their employers still paying them, and they're used to going out and having a great steak. So a lot of our food service distributors turned their business model around overnight, and in the US as well. And they created this online home delivery business. So business started to boom again for these guys, and we couldn't keep up with the demand.
Really?
So yeah, so in Australia, they're like packing them into freezer boxes, with ice and chilled meat, put them in Australia post, shipping it.
Wow.
USA, FedEx around the USA.
Wow.
And the whole business model actually changed. And believe it or not, some of these guys are thinking, hang on, this is actually really good. We're actually getting paid before the meat is actually even sent, because they're on PayPal or they're on a credit card. Where a lot of these sort of like restaurants used to drag out trading terms and, hold them to ransom. If you're not going to send my order, I can't pay last week's bill. Okay, here it comes. So that was a real weird thing. So even though we slowed down slightly, our demand kept actually pushing through. So it was an interesting period for us in Australia with high-end Wagyu, that people wanted to have that. They wanted to have that experience at home. In Oz, everyone's got a barbecue on the back deck, whether it's a Commando Joe like I've got, or a Weber barbecue, and three other barbecues on the deck as well. And then they'd still cook at home and have that great experience, and get the bottle shop and $40 bottle of wine versus 160, and they enjoyed it.
So, I can imagine. I know that some companies in Europe, I know one particular guy has a chain of restaurants, and he ended up doing home deliveries.
Yes.
So all the restaurant, I mean, he obviously reduced staff, but he ended up keeping the restaurants open because he would do the home deliveries of good quality food, which, to be fair, you don't get here. I don't know what it's like there. I know in the UK and America, you can get great food delivered. Well, that's not true. You can't get great food. But I was in the States recently. I'm going to be honest with you. Their concept of a Michelin star restaurant is Burger King to us. It was an absolute joke. The whole place is a joke. I can't wait to go back and challenge some more chefs over there. It was terrible. But anyway, that's a personal thing. Having a liter of coffee in the morning doesn't make me feel great. And deep fat how would you like your bacon? I'd like it crispy. Deep fat fryer. Who does that? Who deep fat fries bacon? I mean, honestly, I've never seen anything like it in my life. And it turned up on the plate, and it was just this carbonized, powdery bacon. You turn it into powder. Like, oh, what is this, a topping? What's going on? Don't understand it. I don't understand how they can do that. But anyway, what was I talking about? So he turned his restaurants into this amazing home delivery service of hot food of high quality. And it went absolutely crazy busy. And so he managed to keep those restaurants going during the COVID period, but basically because he was a essential service, delivering food. Right. So I think, well, that's cool. I'm glad that you guys managed to do it. Did you reduce insemination during that period?
Well, the beauty of our business is that we just keep ticking over, and we're growing more. It's interesting. The guys in Korea put more cattle on. They actually grew more cattle or inseminated more cattle. So 2024, which we're in now, and 2025, the Hanwoo, which is the Korean Wagyu, they're going to have the most record productions over 24 and 25. It's going to be huge, the biggest they've ever had. And
what's
the thing is, because
we find it very difficult to get that here.
Yeah, look, it tastes great. I mean, it's a good product if it's cooked right. But the problem is with competitiveness is that you can't have Wagyu any more expensive than the local Hanwoo. So now there's all this cattle coming at them, getting produced, prices are getting pushed down, and they just can't afford our full-blood Wagyu because it just can't compete.
And so if you're cooking at home, what cut would you choose to cook on a general basis? If you had to stay away from the top three and the tomahawks, things like that, what would you cut? What would you do with it?
Yeah, look, I'm a bit of a Kamado Joe king. I've got the big Joe 3 on the deck. It's bigger than me, and I'm 6'3". So I like to do that slow cook smoke. Whether it's a navel end brisket or you can do a beautiful brisket on there with a rub, and then cook it for 12 hours. A Karubi plate, which is the navel end brisket that's been trimmed up. Those items that still eat unbelievable, being a full blood Wagyu, that you can just still put them in overheat, cook them gently. Majority of our Wagyu, going back, is that we don't try and put, if you put some of our Wagyu over coals or over a naked flame, you're going to burn the house down because of that fat. So a lot of our chefs, what we talk about is, just put it on a hot plate. We got a lot of chefs who will just actually salt the hot plate and then just put the steak directly on the hot plate and cook it.
Yeah, I mean, I have on my barbecue, I have a hot plate on the right hand side because that's where I'm going to cook a lot of the fatty beef and also things like a Berrico pork, which is almost the Wagyu of the pork, really. I cook it on that side rather than naked flames. If I do that, I'm going to have to buy another fire extinguisher because that's what's going to happen. It's going to kick off and it's going to turn into hell. And I've done it. I've made the mistake. Like I said, I'm not the best chef in the world. I've done the most stupid things you've ever seen.
We've all done it.
Having a CO2 fire extinguisher next to me is pretty important.
So reverse sear is really good too, right? So reverse sear it, turn the flame off, put it over there, let the heat circulate around the meat, and then finish it on the grill or on the hot plate. But I like things like intercostals and top sides thinly shaved, just temper them down, slice them really fine. On the hot plate, I made with topside recently. It was my daughter's 25th birthday, and I did these amazing bulgogi soft shell tacos, craziness. And it was basically it was the top side shaved, and I don't have the luxury of having a slicer here, so threw it in the freezer for a couple of hours. Just got my chef's knife, just really thin shaved into a bowl, bulgogi marinated overnight, and then directly what I did, I wish I could get it for you, but it's dark outside. I've almost got it's almost like fishing wire. Like trying to think of the right word. It's like wire, right? And it's like chicken wire. And you lay all the meat over it, and then you put the next one over like a clamp, and then just pick it up and just put that over the charcoal and just keep turning it into a new bowl, salad, soft shell tacos. Everyone just kept walking up. Just build your own. So cheap product, top sides. It's a cheap.
It's perfect.
Yeah, just ate amazingly. So things like that. Just trying to think outside of the dynamics of it all.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's so important to be able to use those other cuts. As a business, you need to sell them, first of all.
Yes.
But there is opportunities there for restaurants to definitely make a really good profit. I like to get. I've done it with Wagyu, where I've had a brisket. We had an extra. It sounds ridiculous how I'd have an extra brisket, but I had an extra brisket, and a really good client wanted a brisket. I had to buy it in 2 in a box. I can't buy them individual, of course. I think you guys sell them 2 in a box as well.
Yeah,
and they're like 6-7 kilos. They're big.
Yeah.
And I got this one. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do something with it. I'm gonna play with this. And I actually, people are gonna cry when they hear what I did to it. So what I did, I got it really, really cold. And then I cut it into strips of about 3-4 inches wide.
Yeah.
Nice strips. And then I cut it into square blocks. So I had a square block sort of like this. And they were really defined because it was really, really cold. Not quite frozen, but really, really cold. I got that beautiful line. And then I sous vide them for about 6 hours individually. Beautiful. Then when they came out of the sous vide, I literally brushed them with a mix of sesame oil and black garlic ketchup, and then put them into the oven to roast them. And it got all crispy on the outside and all caramelized, and it just fell to pieces. And I just served it one night with a friend who'd come around to the house. I thought, I'll do that tonight for a laugh. It was absolutely stunning. This guy, he came around to the house, he said to me, I've never tasted anything like it. He goes, what was that? I said, it's Wagyu brisket. He was like, oh, he goes, the flavor was unbelievable.
Amazing.
I think he said to me it was the best bit of beef he'd ever had in his life as well, actually. But yeah, for me, fun things like that are just, they're not that hard to do.
No,
you don't need to be a professional chef. You just need to be able to have some good quality produce. And for me, good quality produce is absolutely essential.
Great.
So would you say that you're becoming more and more famous as a brand now globally?
Oh, absolutely. We get, I'd be probably seeing 10 to 15 inquiries a day from around the world. And what's interesting, we see how markets start trending. The USA at the moment is exploding. Like I'm off to Dallas on Thursday. Spending time in Dallas, Chicago, LA, Vegas, and then the next pot that's absolutely boiling away and going crazy is Mexico. Mexico is
Really?
going off the Richter scales. Yeah. So I'm heading down into Mexico for 3 nights with our distributor down there. And, they're right into their social media. They're passionate. They're just super cool, sort of fun, sort of entertaining on social media, where they got really good videography and really drive and sell the brand. It's exciting. That whole sort of region's very exciting. So, we're getting more and more sort of famous, and more demand is coming through, which is, it's exciting. We got guys that started on buying 10 head, as in full sets, and now they're ringing up saying, Shieldsy, we need 100. When can you do it? Hey, slow down. These guys are still on feed. They're coming through.
Yeah.
Got to get production space. There's a whole knock-on effect. It's not just we can just knock them and box them. We've got to get production space. We've got to get packaging right. We've got to get logistics, air freight. This is another crazy thing, Damian, at the moment, because everyone's flying again, right? So everyone is going traveling. So, I went to Perth last week for a meeting. There's not one spare seat in that flight. A couple of months before that, I was in Bali, not one spare seat. So while people are on the top level, downstairs, they've got luggage. So all of a sudden, there's less space for cargo. So majority of our product is air flown. So either in an AKE or a PMC. And if a paying consumer is buying the seat and they put luggage, your freight is second best. You don't get on board.
Yeah, no, totally. So, I mean, I'm quite interested to see what happens with playing with airline pricing, because I've noticed that.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing to do with your industry, but I suppose it's like a butterfly effect, isn't it? Everything affects everything else. And for me, if you go on to, I use a skyscanner.net, which it gives you sort of really good indication of flights available and pricing.
Yeah.
And, pre-COVID, my dad lives in Thailand. So if I went to see him, if I did an economy seat from the south of France to Thailand through Dubai, for example, I think I'd probably pay about, I could get it as low as 550 euros, but you'd probably be paying 750, on average. Now it's 1,200, 1,300 minimum.
Yeah.
And that's quite a bit after COVID. As soon as the air flight restrictions were lifted, it was 1,500 euros, 1,600 euros returning as economy. And as business flights, you've probably seen business flights probably double to most places.
Yeah,
you used to be able to get a flight out to Thailand, you'd see them for 2,200, 2,300 euros. Now you're looking at 4,500. So do you think that gradually, because air freight, we have to do a lot of air freight around the world for our clients, because they're super yachts. And they'll phone us up. They could be in Costa Rica. I can't drive it to Costa Rica. We've tried. The van sinks as soon as it hits Portugal. So we have to fly it. And you generally, that the air freight is crazy. If somebody wants, I was dealing with I think it was over 90-meter boat, and the whole order was over 3.5 tons. Getting the air freight on a plane was hard, like you said. Getting that space, because the airlines don't have as much cargo space. So, you're paying a lot more. I think, it used to be, what was it pre-COVID? I think we were paying like 4.5 euros a kilo on an air freight. We went to the Caribbean, for example, like Saint Martin out of Paris. Then it went up at one point. It was like 9.50 euros per a kilo. So if you're taking a ton, the price for the actual cargo is sometimes more than the cost of the product.
Correct.
Do you know what I mean?
We see it. Yeah.
And that's the problem you're coming across as more people are getting back into flying. The flight prices are gradually, the airlines aren't stupid. They're still trying to make as much as they can to recover losses. But it's gradually creeping down and down. So the economy seats are getting back. But as the economy seats fill, there's no cargo available. Correct. And that's where the prices will rise for product like yours and what we're shipping. I don't think it's going to get any easier anytime soon.
No. And that was actually one thing with COVID. Freight was so expensive because there was less flights. So, we were doing Brisbane to Dubai, and it was around $12 to $14 a kilo.
You sell the product in Dubai?
Yeah.
You have restaurants with it? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So we've got, Prime 68, the highest steakhouse in the world, on the 68th floor. Chef Maritz up there takes our product, and we got product in Stockholm at Restaurant Agia. with
Oh,
Market
really? Wow.
Control.
And
Yeah,
which
yeah.
ones in
So
Vegas? Which chefs in Vegas use it?
So we've got obviously Cart, we've got T-Bones, a whole lot of guys. I'm going to my first trip into Vegas next week. So I was in LA last year, the same time. It was Valentine's Day. I arrived, and every restaurant was full. And walked in there with my boss. I was like, "What are these two guys doing?" That's all good. We're Aussies. We're here for a beer. So we'll watch the Super Bowl today and celebrate next week. But yeah, no. So we've got a lot of restaurants around. US, which are booming. So what we're actually going to do, we're in the start of it now to actually start putting the restaurants that we're actually showcased in, and we're actually going to have that on our website. So people can actually see where they can actually go and buy it, either for a chef to cook it or a retail option where they can actually go and buy the product and take home and cook themselves.
I'd
Yeah,
love
so
you
it's
to have
exciting.
I'd love you to have Riviera Gourmet listed for under super yachts as well.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
the thing about it is with Wagyu, like I said to you earlier, we get asked for Wagyu a lot.
Yeah,
And very rarely will somebody specify the
yeah,
brand.
yes,
For me, I think it's super important that people do specify the brand that they prefer.
yeah,
It's not always available, of course, but prefer,
yes,
because it means that they're going to get, a consistent product. And I think for super yacht chefs, I don't know if you know much about it or you know anybody in the industry, but it's having a consistent product because of the
yeah,
time scale you have to cook. I mean, you've got to
yeah,
remember that you're doing whatever the client wants, whenever
yes,
the client wants. It's
yeah,
24
yeah,
hours a day, rolling kitchen, rolling
yeah,
galley. There's
yeah,
none of this. Oh, dinner's going to be at 7. That's
yeah,
bullshit. I
yeah,
mean, honestly, you wouldn't believe it. A chef will be in the galley. He knows he's got people sitting down at 7. Okay, that's when
yeah,
the
yeah,
principal said we're sitting down at 7.
yeah,
6 o'clock, one of the ladies is up on the aft deck and she's a bit early. She says, "Oh, quite fancy a sandwich." So the
yeah,
chef has to do a sandwich. It's not just two pieces of bread with a bit of ham in. It's
yeah, yeah,
Michelin
yeah,
level food. He's got to create
yeah,
something out of nothing with his own
yeah,
imagination in seconds. He does
yes,
that. He creates it. It's up there 10 minutes later. Somebody else comes down and is wandering around. Oh, that looks nice. I think I'll have a sandwich. Before you know it, there's only 2 people sitting at the dinner table for 7 o'clock
yeah,
sitting.
yeah,
Everyone else is full because they've just had a sandwich. So they'll want to eat at 9:30. And
yeah,
so this
amazing.
carries on. And then some people have gone to the nightclub, or they've gone to then maybe somebody went out for a restaurant and they've come back with
Yeah,
3 friends. And it's
yeah,
now 2 o'clock in the morning and they all want
wow,
burgers because they're pissed. And it just
yeah,
continues. The chef will be lying in bed and it'll be hey, there's somebody who
yeah,
needs burgers, and boom, he'll get out gourmet burger. We're not talking,
wow, yeah,
McDonald's,
yeah,
proper full meal
yeah,
almost. Sometimes
yeah,
they'll be doing a full buffet at 3 in the morning
yeah,
for 20 people that
yeah,
came back from the club. And in the morning, you could have the kids getting up at 6 a.m. wanting to go and do the water sports. They need a full breakfast, the buffet set up, ready to go. So it's carnage. The
yeah,
galleys are tiny compared to what you'd have as a restaurant,
yeah, yeah,
kitchen. So the
yeah,
galley's tiny. There's lack of space for storage, and there's
yeah,
zero time. And the chef has to know how to do everything. And I mean
yeah,
everything. You've got to
yeah,
Google. Sometimes they have to Google and go, I've never even heard of this. And they'll
yeah,
Google it and they'll go, I'm going to have to try and do this now. And that's the level of chef.
yeah,
No
wow,
time, no sleep, continuous 24 hours a day. And therefore, you need a product that's consistently going to offer you
yes, yeah,
exact same finish. And if you
yeah,
find that, you hold on to it for dear life because you
yeah,
do not
absolutely,
want to change the brand. And for
yeah,
me, having a product like yours is really important because I
great,
know if I've got tomahawks, for example, always in my freezer ready to go,
yeah,
the chef will say, I need the tomahawk. He knows what he's getting. He knows what he's
yeah,
playing with. He knows
yeah,
what he's going to do with it. He knows the size they're going to come in. All of
yeah,
these different things are just super relevant for him.
yeah.
How do you, as a business, deal with, all of these different types of clients? I mean, have you even heard of super yachts before?
Well, I'm very fortunate that I live on the Gold Coast, and there's a marina up here on the Gold Coast, just north of us at Service Paradise, and there's Hope Island and Sanctuary Cove where there's the big boat shows. So a lot of super yachts, not a lot, do sneak in and out. But I'll tell you a funny story is that about 3 weeks ago I was running on the beach and I saw a mate of mine I haven't seen for ages, and he used to own a real estate agents. So I started talking to him, and he was with another guy, and we got talking and introduced me. And what do you do? I said, I'm in the beef and Wagyu game, and I supply beef, Wagyu around the world. I said, what do you do? He goes, I'm a captain. I went, okay. who do you fly for? He goes, no, I don't fly. I sail. Like I do white boats. I said, oh, right, whereabouts? He said, wherever the owner wants me to be, I'll be there. I said, okay. And then we got talking about, and I said, how does it go? He said, oh, you got 35 staff. He said, I said, hard to manage. And he said, the staff aren't hard to manage. It's the client. That's what he's telling me, how hard it is to make sure everyone's happy. And then I started talking about it. I said, oh, you wouldn't believe it, but I'm actually going on a podcast in about 3 weeks' time with Riviera Gourmet. And he got his phone out. I'm not lying. He scrolled down and he went, Damian Knight. I went, yep, that's him. He goes, we always buy from him. He's the best of the game. So it's a small world, right?
Fantastic.
It's just that,
yes, tiny, isn't it? And that's you just going for a run on the beach and you bump into somebody who works with us. It's crazy, isn't it?
It's
not crazy.
Yeah. So it's exciting. That's the sort of business we're in, and we talk, and we're a 24/7 business, 7 days a week. Although not working, it's just based on time zones, and we deal with everyone around the world. So it's 7:20 now here in Queensland, and it's probably 10:20 in Europe. And that's the way we are. We're always on WhatsApp, WeChat, Line. The phone's pinging away the whole time. Chefs are chasing, saying, hey, have you got this? What can I do? Distributors run out. Can we get more product? So we're always
this is how I got
to be nimble.
in contact with you. It's how I got in contact with you guys. I literally wanted to get in contact, and I try many different ways to get hold of people at companies these days. I try LinkedIn's quite good, especially if you're trying to get to the owner of the business. It's quite handy. They do usually respond. I find emails one of the worst ways to communicate with people until you make contact.
Yeah.
If you send somebody an email, I get thousands. I don't even look at them. Most of them go to my spam there, But I actually got a hold of you guys the first time through Instagram. I liked you on Instagram, and then I sent a message asking a question because I actually had a request for Wagyu full blood halal. Okay.
Yes.
Now that ain't that easy to get a hold of, and one of the reasons they couldn't have Japanese, and a lot of people don't know this, you cannot, if you're halal, you cannot have Japanese Wagyu. And the reason you can't is because of the beer part of it. First of all, if it is going to be drinking beer, that's a no-go. And I saw your stuff. I saw your awards. It looked amazing. I mean, obviously visually on your website, it was kick-ass. I looked at it and went, shit, I got to sell this. This looks amazing. And I messaged through, and Sarah from your office literally sent back your halal certification. A certificate. I was like, wow, it's amazing. And that's how I first got in contact with you guys, basically because I needed to get full blood but Wagyu that was halal. And I don't think there's many out there that do it, is there?
In Australia there is, but around the other parts of the world there's not. So we're supplying the palaces in Abu Dhabi, we're in Dubai, we're in Bahrain, we're in Saudi Arabia, we're in Riyadh, we're in Jeddah. So we're in all those real strong sort of cultural areas that demand to be halal. And it's amazing, even in Australia, a lot of people are actually demanding it to be halal. Not that they necessarily would be selling it to, if someone came in that was Muslim, it's because just in case they did. That
You're absolutely right. That's so true. I'd prefer to have a Wagyu that was halal than a Wagyu that wasn't, because it covers all bases.
Correct.
I don't need to mess around. I've got it. I'm okay. If they are going to be requesting that I have it, and if they don't, they're not offended because it happens to be halal as well. Why would you be? So you're right.
And that's why our brand's starting to get really good traction now up in the Maldives. So we're up in the Maldives, we're in the Seychelles, some really strong cultural beliefs up there. So which is great. So we've got product going up into that whole region, and the demand is just out of control. Like
you ship it from Australia to the Maldives and Seychelles direct. Is that right?
Yeah. We just pretty much transships through with SQ into Singers, and then it'll fly through from there. Yeah. So we work very closely with our freight on forwarding companies, and we obviously try and get the best rate, because obviously we pass that freight rate onto the customer. So we work in on their behalf to get the best deal over the line for them. But so pretty much AVs or AKEs and PMCs. We've got our second delivery going next week into Jakarta. So up into Indonesia. So once again, that's going to be Basa labeled. So there's all these different label requirements around the world. And if you get there and it arrives and it's the wrong label, a whole consignment can be basically sent back to Oz and cost you an absolute fortune.
Yeah.
So, we've got to be over that whole labeling requirement for cultural, country requirement and legislation.
All of your beef is shipped fresh.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, we do a little bit of frozen, but not much. Majority of it's all frozen. Chilled product.
Why is that?
And what we find, just because chilled, look. There's a couple of things with frozen meat, and I've been in the meat game for a while. And if you've got to give the product some age, because if you process the animal on Friday and you bone on Monday, and then you put it straight into the deep freeze at minus 30 or 40, whatever it might be, that product will never have the opportunity to actually age. So the muscle, the protein, it won't relax, it won't break down, and it will potentially be a little bit chewier or tough when eating. So it's like these guys doing dry age, wet age in the cryovac bag. Just giving it some time to age is king. So majority of our product will go chilled. But the problem is that we're flying it, and because the demand's so high, the customer's not holding enough product. The chef's buying it, and it was only processed last week. And we're saying you've got to have that stock turning. Yeah, you've got to have that stock turn around. So what we've got a couple of really cool operators in the USA now. They're actually now catching up, and what they're doing is they air freight some product, and then they put the rest in a sea container and they sail it. So it's like 30 to 40 days before it arrives into LA. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. And then they just keep rotating the product through. So it's a real smart move that they're doing up there.
So from slaughter to what's the shelf life once you bag it?
Look, country requirement is another thing. So UAE, it's 120 days shelf life. So we get 120 days easy. So
from bagging.
From bagging, yeah. And it's obviously there's a lot of variances that you got to make sure that hasn't sat on the back dock of a plane that's been pushed off in Riyadh at 60-degree heat, and then all of a sudden, then it ends up on the back of a truck, and they turn the air conditioner or the refrigeration off because it burns too much power. So yeah, you've got to do it. So we have we put a data logger in every one of our shipments. And then we get that data logger back, and we can read live on what's actually happened. So if there's a problem, yeah. So we can scan it and go, hey guys, there's a pick. Yeah, this has gone up. So what's happened? Well, it's sat on the back dock in Jeddah for 6 hours, and
that's really interesting because we do a lot of air freight, and with the new property we have here, we have what's called an agrément sanitaire, which in France you have to have if you want to export anywhere in the world, and we want to obviously export. So if we're selling to a lot to the Indian Ocean, Dubai, to yachts in Dubai, places like that, the Maldives, Seychelles, Sri Lanka, even Phuket, we'll ship food out to all through the winter. And one thing I've always wanted to do, somebody came to the office a few years ago with this tiny little badge like this, and he claimed that it could feed back live temperatures, and I was like, wow, really? I said, how much are each of these? 40 euros per a piece. I was like, I stick one in one of the boxes with the crate, with the pallet, and it can kind of give me a reasonably good temperature. And I was thinking what I'd really like to do is actually have that linked to the client's order, so the client could, at any point from when it gets packed in our warehouse, see the live temperature.
Yeah, track and trace. It's amazing.
Is that something you guys can pretty much do?
You can do it now, or the other one is almost very similar to USB, and it goes in, and then when it arrives at the customer, all they do is plug that USB in, and it gives a readout the whole way through.
That's pretty cool. I like that idea.
Yeah.
That's really cool if you're shipping stuff.
I think it's about $20-$25.
Oh, wow,
and the good thing is with sea containers is that motor's running the whole time, so that refrigeration is just ticking through. It's just air freight you've got to be mindful of. But
so what's your shelf life for Europe?
I think we're about 120 days as well for Europe. Yeah, I'll double check that, but it's once again, it's a country requirement, but it would definitely be think it's about 120 boneless, 90 bone in, but I will triple confirm that for you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because
quite
obviously bone
interesting
in.
because, I have this is the problem with the super yacht industry. It's not like
Yeah,
a restaurant where you're on land, you can have daily deliveries. It's not like that.
yeah,
A yacht can be sitting here in Antibes,
yeah,
start a 2-week charter and may not hit land again.
yeah, yeah,
So how do you deal with that? A chef would take. It's really difficult because, of course, you could take the beef and have it for 2 weeks. Because if you've got 120 days, even though I deliver it with 90, it's still got plenty of
yeah,
time for the trip.
yeah,
The problem is the chef's not just ordering pieces of beef, he's ordering every type of cut from every different type of animal, chicken, lamb,
yeah,
pork, you
yeah,
can name it. And the problem is storage. So a lot of the time they would receive those products, those meat
yeah,
products, and the first thing they do is put them into the freezer,
yeah,
which has other problems. Because if you put, let's say you put 600 kilos of fresh meat into
yeah,
a freezer that's at -18.
yeah,
Okay. If you put 3 bags of chicken on top of each other, in a
yeah,
month's time, when you come to take out that middle chicken bag, it may not be
yeah,
defrosted, it may not be frozen still.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you put all of this packed on top of each other,
yeah,
especially when you've got huge delivery arriving, you've got
yeah,
lots of product, you've got fresh fruit and veg, you've got your fish, meat, dry,
yeah,
dairy, everything.
amazing.
You're packing it away. It can very easily have a bag of chicken breast shoved
Yeah,
inside that freezer, which is in the middle, and that isn't going to freeze quickly.
yeah,
Theoretically, that chicken could have gone off before it's frozen,
wow,
especially if it's
amazing.
-18. I mean, you should be
Yeah,
freezing much, much, much less than that,
yeah,
-29 minimum. So in
yeah,
reality, we sometimes get a phone call 3 months after delivery, and the chef will say there was a bag of chicken here that was not good, smelt weird.
yeah,
So, well, it would do because you probably left it in your fridge with all, with a ton of other meat on top of it.
yeah,
It's
those
very
big
difficult that,
insulator. Yeah,
yeah, it's very difficult, this industry, for the chefs,
yeah,
particularly on the yachts. It's difficult for us as well. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
we would never deliver anything that was not completely fresh. But if
yeah,
they've not frozen it in the right way, it's a
yes,
problem.
absolutely.
That's also the
Yeah,
same for your beef. If somebody takes your
yeah,
beef and freezes it and it's not in the right condition, it's not
yeah,
the right frozen temperature, I doubt it would come back to you all the way. It's going to come through to the distributor. And,
yeah,
if I had something
yeah,
that was dodgy, I go to my supplier and say,
yeah,
we have
yeah,
traceability here as well. We have a full system. Every single bag is tracked and
yeah,
scanned into a system.
yeah,
So we know the temperature of the van that it arrived in. We know the temperature of the product when it was put into our cold storage.
yeah,
We know what
amazing.
temperature it is when it goes into our vans. We've got controls in our vans, so we know what temperature is on delivery. I mean, you could
Yeah,
literally come to me and say, 21st of August, you did delivery
yeah,
to Monaco for this client. What was the temperature of the van? I go into my system and I can tell you on
wow,
delivery
amazing.
what the temperature of that van
Yeah,
is. And that's why we don't have problems with people phoning me up
yeah,
saying, you've got
yeah,
a dodgy bag of chicken. Um,
yeah.
but as a food supplier, it's always a worry, isn't it?
Oh,
Freshness of the
absolutely.
product, such
Oh,
such
food.
a pressure on your shoulders.
Yeah, yeah, food safety. And I'd imagine, especially being, sailing in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and you've got a food outbreak of, a spoiled product, and someone gets sick.
Yeah.
It's not like they can just quickly go to a hospital or a doctor if need be. They're the mercy of you know
I think
of
that's why
Imodium.
super yacht chefs are so much more careful than any other chef I've
Yeah,
ever known. I mean,
yeah,
if they open a bag, I mean, quite often you'd open a bag of pork, sous
yeah,
vide, cut it
yeah,
open, vacuum pack. I call it sous vide. We call it sous vide in France, but it's vacuum
yeah,
pack,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
has a smell. Pork has more of
yeah,
a smell quite often
yeah,
than anything else.
yeah,
Well, if a chef smells something that doesn't, even maybe he will
yeah,
just go, I can't serve it. It's got to go in the
yeah,
bin,
yeah,
because they can't take the risk. They just
yeah,
wouldn't take the risk. I mean, if you open a bag of pork at home, take it out of the freezer, defrost it, open it,
yeah,
you'll wash it, and then you'll
yeah,
check and go, oh, it's fine.
yeah,
I'm going to cook it
yeah,
a lot anyway. It's going to
yeah,
be on the barbie for 12 hours. It's fine. And my mates, they're not my real mates who are coming tonight anyway. So, but
yeah.
you can't do that as a professional
No,
chef.
no,
That's for
absolutely.
sure. So it does make
Yeah,
things harder. It's good to know there's 120 days though. It's quite a lot of time. What happens to
yeah.
that beef after 120 days? What's it going to taste like? Is it going to be completely different than after 10 days?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, because as time goes on, the product will change in taste, flavor, profile. You know, I was at a restaurant recently in Europe just before Christmas, and they were doing 100-day dry aged beef. You know, this product was on the spectrum, but my God, it was amazing. You know, you could almost eat it with a spoon. It was just
really?
so amazing. Yeah, but you know, and that's what happens once it starts aging. It's like anything, it just starts breaking down. And I think that's the interesting thing, because in my last role, I used to actually sell a lot of burgers. And so what we used to do is always try and do a frozen burger patty, because you want that burger patty, that Wagyu burger patty, to taste the same all the way through. So you want consistency in the taste and the flavor, because today you don't want a burger patty that's 60 days old. It's going to have that bit of a tinge or a bit of sour note, or, you know, you put sauce and mayo and ketchup and fried onions and cheese and everything else, you might be able to mask it. But it's about trying to capture that in that sort of state of flavor and taste, where steak is a bit different. You've got to let it age out. And
you don't make burgers with stone axe, or you do?
We're about to do a burger run, but it will be a frozen burger run. We're talking, we're talking to it, and it'll be IW vac as well. So it'll be in this perfect individual vac pack burger patty ready to go. And things like that don't take long to defrost as well. So, you know, if you're on one of your super yachts and you know tonight that you've got 20 guests coming back to have, you know, some sliders or burgers and, you know, a brioche bun with, you know, I know, truffle mushrooms and all the rest of it, and, you know, crispy fried onions on a brioche bun with a glass of Moet Chandon, you know that's going to come out, and you can defrost a few of them and get them ready and have the most amazing experience. But yeah, burgers on the.
So we have at the moment Black Angus and we have Wagyu burgers. So we have, I think our Black Angus are 200 gram and our Wagyu are 150 gram.
Yeah, and 150 is what we're doing. Yeah.
The one, I mean, like you said, they're individually frozen in like a blister pack. So we have them in the freezer. People buy however many they want. Obviously, they're lovely. I'd be very interested to taste yours. I will order yours when they're through, without question. If they're here in Europe with the distributor, I'll definitely take them. But one thing that nobody seems to make is slider size burgers.
Yeah.
Nobody does it. So we have to sell, because we get a lot of, the thing is with a Wagyu is they go really well as a slider, as a small 40, 50 gram burger. They're perfect. And so I would advise anybody who's making Wagyu burgers to do the slider one as well. I think it's just something that is difficult to get hold of. And a lot of the time we have to sell Wagyu mince. And so the chef will go, well, I'm doing a party for 120 at the Monaco yacht, at the Monaco Grand Prix. I've got 120 people rolling, and I'm doing sliders. I'm doing these cool recipe. I keep saying to them, why don't do the slider, mini slider, man? But in reality, you know, we have to get Wagyu mince created for them, because it's difficult to buy Wagyu mince in a kilo. Nobody does that. Nobody would do that. So it's difficult, because they want to make, and then they end up having to make these sliders. Whereas if I buy a slider burger, I can buy the slider buns, the brioche buns. I can't buy the burgers,
absolutely,
not the Wagyu. I could sell those all. I mean, you shouldn't base your business model on me buying slider burgers. But it's definitely something I would consider as a creator of burgers, to think about slider burgers, because I think they're so easy. You don't need to sell them individually. You could do 10 in a pack or whatever.
Correct.
But I think they'd sell really, really well. There's a lot of restaurants that I know of in the south of France that do really nice sliders, and the chefs are making those burgers specifically for the sliders. But if you've got an amazingly created burger, why would you make it yourself? You know, you have to cut corners as a chef. You have to. Now, if you can buy an amazing burger, why would you make it? It's going to save you time. You can concentrate on other things. Usually the slider burgers are starter, where you get 2 or 3 different types with different sauces and things like that. For me, I definitely think about. You're like,
well,
no.
No. Well, I used to do them like in that 150 gram, and the chef used to do it was like peel the pack open, cut them into 4, and just quickly roll them, and then just do like that smash burger on the grill. and just put like a weight over it, and then put it on the little slider bun with, like you said, 3 or 4 different sort of flavors, and one might be, amazing. Love it.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's been fun talking to you. I probably could just sit here and talk about food all
Yeah, no,
day with you.
appreciate it.
Are you ever gonna make it into Europe? I mean, you're gonna ever make it down this way?
Yeah. Look, I was there just before Christmas for 21
Oh,
days.
really?
So yeah, I
Oh,
went
wow.
to Anuga and
Okay,
spent
cool.
spent time with our guys up. Nice to meet up in
Wow.
the Netherlands. Yeah, so I spent a
Cool.
lot of time out with the guys, and then went up into Stockholm, and then down into Frankfurt. So, but definitely, yeah, I'll be definitely back up this year. We got
Well,
US next
if you're
week.
in this region, man, try and see if the company will pay for a trip for you into Nice Airport. It'd be
Yeah,
really cool to have you here,
yeah,
to meet you, and obviously bring you over to the test kitchen. We'll bring a chef in. We'll cook some
yeah,
stuff, film it, and have some fun, and maybe have a glass of
yeah.
local wine as well, which would be cool.
Sounds good.
Um,
Yeah.
but it'd be really, really nice if you're, next time you're in Europe, if you can convince the powers that be to let you come and see us as well. We'll do a
Yeah.
bit of
Oh,
filming.
look.
It'd be great
Yeah.
fun.
Look, I can make it happen myself. So definitely, I'll be doing some filming in Mexico in 2 weeks with our
Cool.
guys over there for socials. So we're looking forward to that. And being a chef by trade many years ago, but I've never left the industry. Before in the meat, I was in specialty cheese. So it's always been around that sort of niche product and sort of that center of the plate at the back end of the meal. So the hero on the plate, really. So
Yeah. No, totally.
yeah,
I mean,
no,
exactly. I think that's what it's all about, and that's why I love the
yeah,
product. You guys, have been fantastic with me. You don't know who I am. I sent you a message on
yeah,
Instagram. You've
yeah. Thank
always
you.
been fantastic, which goes to prove that you love the product, you care about the end
Yeah,
customer. And I will do my best to make sure that our clients, really, really do give Stone Axe a try that first time, because I think that's what it's
yeah,
all about. Getting them just
yeah,
to try it one time, see what the
yeah.
product's like, and then they get used to ordering that product. And
Absolutely.
everybody who used it last year in 23 just said to
Yeah,
me, absolutely stunning. So you
yeah.
guys should be
Great,
proud of everything you've
great.
achieved, I think.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you for the
Not
feedback.
not
It's
forgetting
great.
your gold medals and your awards. I mean, if you go to your
Oh,
website,
back to back,
stoneaxe.co, you
and
can see, wow. I mean, how many awards? It's
yeah,
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
yeah. And we got another competition coming up next month. So hopefully we'll get a few more, and then we'll just keep adding to it. But I think our biggest award is people like you reaching out to us and giving us those accolades and talking to us about that chef that got called up on the deck and got that envelope and a high five, and
Yeah.
they're the things that make me excited about this industry and the business. It's about people talking about the brand and the product and that repeat business as well. So it's really appreciative, and thank you very much for the opportunity to jump online and have a chat. It's great.
It just goes to prove that even if you're in Australia and we're in Europe, we can still talk, do a bit of
Absolutely.
business, and have some
Yeah.
fun together. And I think that's really cool. I look forward to
Yeah.
meeting you in the south of France when you get here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Thank you.
Steve, it's been fantastic. I really appreciate your time. You've gone into your evening time. You should be probably with the family chilling, but I
No,
really, really
fantastic.
appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Great.
And
Awesome.
we look forward to our next meet up at some point.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And thank you for the support for the brand. I greatly appreciate it.
We'll push it out as much as we can and tell people all about it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to stop the recording now, and then we'll just
Yeah.
say goodbye to each other.
Okay, great.